Good day to you. My name is Mike Welch, and I'm with the American Independence Museum in Exeter, New Hampshire. And fortunately for all of us, we have a return guest with us today. It's the Honorable Judge William Delker, the New Hampshire Superior Court. So welcome back, Judge, and thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you. I enjoyed our last conversation so much. I'm glad you had me back.
Well, hopefully it'll happen again. That's great. Well, the topic for today is the role of courts as a separate branch of government. The courts play in our democracy. So what exactly is the role of our courts in our democracy?
Sure. So the framers created a really ingenious system in which they divided the government, the power of the government, into three different branches. So we talked last time about how the King of England had all of the power. So in order to avoid that situation, what the framers did is they divided that power into three different areas. They created the legislative power, which resides in the Congress. They created what is known as the executive power, which resides in the president. And then they created the judicial power, which resides in the court, or in the judges in the courts. And so in this way, they were able to have the different branches of government check one another so that no single person or group of people got too much power, because that's really what they were afraid of.
Well, I can understand that. So how did they attempt to balance, if I can use that word, to balance these different branches?
Sure. So in its most basic form, Congress's job is to decide what the laws are. They pass laws. They then transfer those laws to the president, who has to decide whether to sign that law to sign that bill into law and make it become effective. Mm-hmm. And then the president's job is to execute the law. So in other words, to carry that law out and to enforce it. And the court's job is to mediate between those branches, to make sure that both branches of government are following the basic rules set forth in the Constitution, that they're following the rule of law, and it's the court's job to declare laws unconstitutional if either Congress has taken a step too far or the president is doing something that violates some of the fundamental principles in the Constitution. So the court's role is essentially as a referee to make sure that everyone's playing by the rules.
And the rules of the Constitution.
That's exactly right, yes.
Well, besides the checks and balances between the different branches of government, then, are there any other ways that they can maintain this balance?
Yeah, so another really important way that the courts play a role in preserving democracy is to protect the rights of the minority, so the minority viewpoints. So one of the things the framers are really concerned about is that the majority would infringe upon certain basic fundamental rights of the minority people. And so they've created a system in which the courts had the ability to declare certain laws or certain acts of the president in enforcing the law or of Congress in passing laws to be unconstitutional in order to protect basic fundamental rights that each and every one of us have to participate in the government and in democracy.
Well, one thing strikes me. Judges are not elected, correct? So that would make that branch of government the least democratic, if I can use that term, democratic branch of government. So how does that all wash? We're a democratic republic, elected representatives, and yet we've got this huge equal branch of government of judges. How does that play?
Well, that's an excellent question, and you're absolutely right. So under the United States Constitution, and in fact New Hampshire's own Constitution, judges, the judiciary is the least democratic branch of government. So judges are nominated by the president under the federal system, then the Senate confirms them, but judges then serve for life and can only be removed from office by impeachment. So one of the things that the framers wanted is to create an independent judiciary who wouldn't be pressured by the will of the majority, so that judges could say that certain laws that may be very popular nonetheless ran afoul of basic fundamental rights, like the rights that are found in the First Amendment to free speech and the right to assemble and protest. And so the courts have a very important role in protecting those rights and not being pressured by the fear of an election and that pressure of the public.
So one thing, of course, it's always important in elections and in a democracy, of course, is you always have a majority, which means you always have a minority. So we need to make sure they're protected as well. Isn't that true?
Absolutely right. So if an individual thinks that Congress, for example, has passed a law that infringes on, say, the right to free speech or the right to assemble, that person has the ability to come to the courts and to bring a lawsuit against the government to say that their basic fundamental rights have been infringed, and then it's the court's responsibility to decide, what does the Constitution say, and what does this law that Congress passed say, and if the courts find that the law that Congress passed violates the constitutional protections, say in the First Amendment, then courts declare that unconstitutional, and it's in that way that the courts act as a check against the power of Congress or the power of the president.
Fascinating. Now, it was interesting because I got the idea that because it was a democratic republic, then we're always electing our officials, but not when it comes to the laws, because we choose our elected officials to make our laws for us. Well, it's the same thing for the judiciary, in that the people that we have already elected are the ones who are appointing and approving of our judges. Is that?
Yeah, that's
so. It does all meld together as the founders.
That's absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Mike. So the courts aren't totally isolated from the democratic process. It is, under the U.S. Constitution, the president, who is popularly elected, who nominates judges, and it is the Senate, who are popularly elected, who decide whether to confirm those nominations. And so in that way, the public and the voters have an influence on who the judges are and the qualifications of those judges. And so that in turn acts as a check on the court system, so that the courts aren't sort of in their own fiefdom either. And it is a very carefully crafted balance that the framers have created. It's really quite ingenious.
I was just thinking of the same word too. And it really is checks and balances, and it all comes down to the rule of law. We hear that expression so many times. We think about a monarchy. They are ruled by a king. We are ruled by a piece of paper called the Constitution.
That's right.
And people like you get to make decisions that can change people's lives or support them or protect them. I want to thank you again. This has been so fascinating for me, and Judge William Delker from the New Hampshire Superior Court, thank you once again for sharing your time with us here at the American Independence Museum in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Thank you.